Hello, everybody. Welcome to PS101 Physiology of Learning. This is Mr. Mall talking to you through your speakers. If you're listening to this right now, that means you probably missed one of this particular class and you need to watch it for credit to the class. That's totally fine. Just remember that this is a dress rehearsal, so things are a little rough when I deliver this lesson because it is my chance to talk about what I'm going to discuss and whatnot. So if I stumble here and there, please forgive me. Let's talk about how the slideshow is going to go. So first off, session 2, welcome. There is an opening assignment. Remember, for this particular assignment, if you're doing this for makeup, I'm asking for a one-page paper, double-spaced, talking about what was discussed in this slideshow for your makeup assignments. So you don't really have to worry about this opening assignment here if you're watching that, but it is an important opening assignment because a lot of what we're going to talk about in class today does center around the idea of relationship. And if you read the chapter you were supposed to read and turned in your assignment for chapter 4, it's all about relationship building, and it's also a lot about a talk about how negative relationships impact the body, the type of chemicals and endorphins that might release in the brain in both positive and negative sense. So it's all about relationships. And in this particular assignment, for the opening assignment, you got to think about a teacher that made an impact on you, whether positive or negative. Describe the attributes of this teacher and tell how this relationship influenced your decision to become a teacher. If you've done early, please read your classmates' posts and add a reply or like to at least one other person. So that is what the opening assignment is. Debrief. The opening assignment, what is the impact a teacher relationship can have on student learning? And hopefully we're going to have a nice little mix of both positive and negative interactions in regards to teachers we might have had. It wouldn't surprise me if half the class said positive things and half the class said negative things. Because we all remember that one good teacher, and we all remember that Dolores Umbridge that you might have had. Very, very possible. Anyway, one of the things pointed out in the slideshow is conscious classroom management. The 2x10 strategy, 2 minutes for 10 days. And I don't even have to click that link to understand what they're talking about there. The 2 minutes for 10 days strategy is a relationship building strategy where you take a student you might be having a hard time creating a positive relationship with, and for 2 minutes of your day, for 10 days in a row, you try to talk to that one student about something that is not school related, something that is of that student's interest, whether it be something like Pokemon cards or baseball or maybe his or her family's business. Try to figure out what your students' interests are, talk with them about it, and show that you are interested in what they are interested in. This is one of the key things to developing a good relationship with students. And for this particular quick slide, the conscious teaching, there is a newsletter and strategies archive. This is a newsletter you're welcome to sign up for if you want, if you're interested. This might be a good tool for you to think about brain-based strategies, and also there is some archival stuff in here where you can take a look at this and think about some of these strategies and maybe bring it up in your own final assignment, if you will. So that is that. The agenda today, we have an SEL check-in, a social emotional learning check-in, if you will, relationships in the classroom, CRT, culturally responsive teaching, how senses impact learning, the power of neuroplasticity, PDSA final project, closing, and homework. Objectives. So we went over objectives and norms as brain-based strategies to use inside the classroom. I'm not going to touch on that too much, but that is right there what we were talking about there. Nothing much else I need to really go over there. The social emotional learning check-in. Which snowman are you today? If we were in class, I would ask everybody to type in the chat a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and then be prepared to answer or to give a response as to why you chose that particular snowman. Are you a happy snowman? Are you a joyous snowman? You got happy, and then it looks like extra happy over here. This guy's just chilling. This guy's just all about the world. And then you got someone who's kind of like a deer in the headlights kind of look over here with this snowman. Are you feeling happily trapped, I guess? I know I'm going to choose the grumpy WTF snowman here myself. I'm not exactly in the happiest of moods today. I try my best self to be happy as much as possible, but I had a heck of a day yesterday. So if I was leading class right now, I would be teaching number 5, Grumpy WTF Snowman. Or maybe you're just sad and feeling like you're melting all over the place. Little check-ins like this, little fun little things to talk with your students are good ways to see where students are at as they enter your classroom. I'm sure everybody here has seen emotion boards showing different faces and what kind of thoughts or feelings that might be for students. Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling sad? Maybe having a chance to say, hey, where do you feel you're at today, little Johnny, as they walk in? And if they point at angry, you can go, oh no, what's happening? And have a quick little conversation with them that way. Good way to talk about emotions with students. Food for thought on that. Relationships in the classroom. As you watch this video that follows, note what is resonating with you and consider your personal experience with letting students lead with their identity. That is what we are looking at today.
Young people's racial and cultural identities are critically important. And we have to acknowledge that the way we have set up opportunities for learning and development are not always respectful of the diversity that we have in this country. As we are thinking about how to maximize chances that young people are thriving, it's important to let them lead with their identity. Not bury it, but lead with it. Show it off, be proud of it, actually display it, to perform it, to put it up on the stage, to put it up on the screen, to make videos about it, to write poetry about it, so they are really bringing themselves into the room. If I come into a space and I don't trust this space and I don't bring my full self into this space, the behavior that you see may not be reflection of my competence. It's a reflection of me not being motivated to show you what I have because I don't trust this situation. If I don't have a relationship with you and I don't get to be a little bit more of who I am, you're gonna slow down my learning and development by not knowing me. Schools and community organizations and families and the overall sort of environment of the community are all playing a role in shaping the experiences and contexts and relationships where learning happens. That basically is what the science of learning and development has told us, that all adults, all settings, all experiences matter.
Edutopia has a lot of great stuff on it, by the way. All experiences matter. I like that particular saying she says at the very end. Everybody has their own lived experience. Everybody has things that have happened in their lives that are both positive and negative, and those particular experiences impact the way kids think and feel. And you hopefully should be helping them, these students, feel welcomed in your classroom and do your best to understand their lived experiences. Group discussion. Share one or more of the following. What resonates with you on these ideas? What thoughts, feelings, or questions do you have? What is your personal experience with letting students lead with their identity? And inside class, I would say I'm going to do a quick raise of hands if anybody wants to talk, and try to call on 2 or 3 individuals to talk about it. If anybody else wants to share some more, they can. And then I'm going to head on to the next slide, the why. For students to be successful learners, it is crucial that educators create a safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environments that honor diversity, emphasize equity, and foster inclusion. Here's one way you can do those particular steps, as dictated in the previous slide. CLRT, culturally responsive teaching. I forgot the L there. Culturally linguistically RT. Oh, what was that L? I don't usually use that when I talk about this. Yeah, linguistically. Culturally and linguistically responsive teaching is what we're talking about with CLRT. And you'll see this Ready for Rigor framework here. That Ready for Rigor framework, that little link, it's broken unfortunately right now, but this is what we're talking about, all right? For students to be ready for rigorous learning, they need to be aware. They need to have created learning partnerships. Their brains need to be ready for information processing. And there is a community of learners and learning environment where there's positivity and places for students to take chances and not be afraid of making mistakes. Well, what does that all look like? Reflect on your own practice. We got a Jamboard here. For the class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that Jamboard and I'm going to share the link. And we have this culturally and linguistically responsive teaching slide Jamboard here. And on each of the following slides, there's one part of that framework that I was discussing. And everybody's going to put little notepads about what CLRT practice are you currently incorporating into your work, and what one would you like to develop? Would you like to develop ideas centered around awareness? And you have lots of bullet points here in regards to what awareness is in relationship to culturally, linguistically responsive teaching. So you have these things here that you can think about, what kind of things that you're hopefully already doing inside your classroom. You have things in regards to learning partnerships, information processing, and having a community of learners. What kind of things are you personally doing right now to help get these particular ideas inside your classroom to make sure that we respect everybody's identities, cultures, ideas, and thoughts? So if you were in class, I would now give about 10 minutes for everybody to post a couple of sticky notes up here on this one, that one, this one, and that one. Since you are not in class, I will not ask you to do that, but if you're watching this video, I do want you to think about these ideas. And if you're watching this because you missed the class, you'll see that there's going to be a bunch of sticky notes up here from what your classmates put up there. Read some of them. See what you got up there. Get some ideas. If you don't think you're doing this well enough, maybe you'll get some ideas from reading these particular slides. Influences on student-teacher relationships. Chat blast. Name some positive influences on student-teacher relationships. Reference the page number in the book. Again, you were supposed to read chapter 4 in the book, and there was a lot of talk on chapter 4 about this particular idea. Even as I am talking to you, I'm going to look back on chapter 4 and look at some of the things that we discussed in that particular chapter. And for me, I think a lot about the negative as opposed to the positive influences on student-teacher relationships. I work in a classroom where I work with students who have emotional and behavioral challenges. And a lot of these students that I work with have lots of history with being in abusive relationships. Or maybe they have reactive attachment disorder, RAD. Or they might be in the foster care system, things like that. That's the negative influences that might happen in a student's life. When we talk about positives, a lot of these positive things that can happen from a positive student-teacher relationship might include the creation of oxytocin, the cuddle chemical. If you have positive influences inside the classroom with your teacher, your brain might release oxytocin, which might make you more ready to accept what a teacher might be saying. Other positive things that you can do as a teacher is to keep your word. If you say that your students can get an extra 10 minutes of break time, make sure you follow through with that. And if you make a mistake, own up to your mistake and let students know you apologize for those mistakes and that you will learn from them. think about those things. And for this, by the way, that chat blast in class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have people in the chat type in some things that they know about positive influences. And I'm not really going to be really worried about referencing the page number, but positive influences in general for student-teacher relationships. What doesn't work? One of the big parts in the book was the idea of social shaming, which is student-led or teacher-led. And they gave a list of different things that students might do and teachers might do that might shame students into acquiescing to rules or ideas, right? When we talk about student-led social shaming, we're talking about bullying, right? Big kid pushes another kid over, things like that. Kids might get pantsed, things like that. Getting a swirly, head in the toilet. I'm thinking of all the ones I used to experience myself back when I was in high school. Kids following other kids and picking on them. That's student-led kind of shaming, and it really denigrates a student and makes them not want to be in that space if they're feeling socially shamed by students. But that can also be at a teacher-led level as well. And I myself, as an EBD teacher, I use a positive behavior management system. And part of that positive behavior management system is a red, yellow, green system, which in this book says you might want to leave that system. And in EBD world, there is something about consequences and understanding positive consequences and negative consequences and making sure that you're not punishing students. You're consequencing them. There's a big difference. And it is something that I find myself struggling with. A teacher that I was working with before had a level system in his class that had 5 levels on it, and none of the students were ever able to get past level 3 because it was impossible. And eventually, the students would just quit and just stay on level 1. So these are the kind of reasons why these particular systems have their flaws, have their drawbacks. When we think about social shaming and special education in general, well, what kind of things can make a student feel like the teachers are shaming them in that environment? Well, they're riding the short bus. Students in special education are typically in bungalows held in the back of the school. Principals of the school might not want the special education students to participate in programs, which is a form of ostracization and segregation, I would point out. And I am seeing that happen a little more than I would like in particular school environments. These are the things I'm seeing in regards to this. I don't like it. It happens though, and it's important for us to recognize the things our community and our schools are doing, and maybe what yourself might be doing in regards to teacher-led social shaming. For that particular part in the book, which was one of my favorite parts of the book, because I kind of had to go, yeah, I'm seeing that in my own classroom a little bit from my own actions. Maybe I need to tweak on that a little bit and tweak that system. But the idea of these hand-me-down strategies that people have learned from multiple older teachers that are not with the times, if you will, was a big part for me in the reading in page 76 myself. So think positively. Try your best to be positive, even when a kid's having a tough time and might be cursing you out. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of practice. Hopefully, you are getting away from these particular practices in your class. Chapter 4, Relationships in the Classroom. So for in the class, this is pretty self-explanatory. You read chapter 4, there's different slides, different groups are going to be talking about it with the brain-based strategies that are found within the book. I'm not going to touch too much on this. That's very similar to what we did last week. Time for a break. We are going to continue. It's all about survival, how senses impact learning. An example of sensory input, a discrepant event. That's a crazy little word, isn't it? Discrepant. Sounds important. How many passes does the white team make? So how many passes does this white team make?
The monkey business illusion. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events. And that's the monkey business illusion.
When you look for a gorilla, you often miss other events. That's a great little saying. You gotta see the forest from the trees, and you gotta take your little wins as you can. That's obviously a little bit of an optical illusion there, but it is an example of sensory input. What does this mean to us as educators?
The monkey.
How is learning impacted by this stuff? How is learning impacted by smell, air quality, negative ionization, sight, lighting, the body, sound, touch, temperature, tactile stimulation, proximity, and teacher talk? Well, we do live in an area that's had a lot of problems with air quality, what with fires and things like that. Learning definitely got impacted in ways from that. Negative ionization. I need to refresh my memory as to exactly what that means. Can't remember off the top of my head. But smell, if we're around stuff that's noxious or maybe perfumes that might cause us to have our senses go on overload, might be a problem. Lighting, big thing to talk about. Muted tones might be best for inside the classroom. Sound, I mean, if we're talking about students who have an autism diagnosis, sound and sight and smell are really important for them. What kind of things are you doing inside your classroom to help mute or make those less problematic for those particular students? Temperature, if it's too hot, it's too hot. You don't want to go outside maybe, or if it's too cold, it's too cold. You don't want to go outside maybe. Either way, it depends on what your kids are. Are you high schoolers? You might just want to be sitting around anyway and be on your cell phone lately. Tactile stimulation, proximity teacher, all these things can impact us because students learn what they pay attention to. So if they're paying attention to something, they're going to learn from it, right? And in today's society, that cell phone has a lot of things that they pay attention to there. And that's one of the ways they learn. Just side note, I'm talking a lot of smack on cell phones here right now, and you can actually use cell phones to help learn inside the classroom. There are kind of websites or games or things like that, Kahoot, where you can use a cell phone to help students learn, and something you might want to look at yourself and maybe think about as you play around inside your classroom. Another one of these strategies, I'm not going to talk too much. We're talking about senses impacting learning, applying learning ideas into it, so on and so forth. This was in Chapter 3. This was not required reading for the homework, but for the class, and this is why you need the book. This is what you would be doing inside the classroom right now. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Neuroplasticity. Think about it. How important are you and your role in developing the brain of a child?
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic, hence neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-traveled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion, we start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
It ain't easy, though. If you have bad habits in your life, it's real tough to make changes to your brain. If you're a pack-a-day smoker and you're looking to change that, it's going to take a lot of work. Same if you have a sedentary lifestyle. It's possible, though, and once you do make that switch, you can make that change for the rest of your life. Some strategies here. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change, to rewire, relearn, and strengthen important connections. Some of these things might be imposed upon you, such as traumas, brain disorders, abuse, neglect, and poverty, which might expose you to toxins that impact your brain. There was quite a bit of talk about that in Chapter 4 as to how different chemicals are released in the brain in regards to this. What was the name of the one? Cortisol, that was it. The stress hormone gets released when you have these things happen upon you, and it's shown to have detrimental effects upon your health. In fact, if you have too much cortisol in your system, it is more deadly for you than being obese. The joke they make in the book is, it's better, if you're going to have that donut, it's better to have it with a good friend, which is true, because those are things that we can change for ourselves. Some other things, by the way, imposed: loving caretakers, safe neighborhoods, clean air, role models. You might not have that access to them if you are in poverty-stricken areas. You might not see these clean airs, role models, safe neighborhoods, or loving caretakers. It's another thing to bring up here. A lot of your particular stuff that you're working on inside your classrooms right now for Lake County has a huge emphasis on the low socioeconomic backgrounds of your students that you're having, and they're probably not seeing a lot of access to these particular imposed things upon them. Some of these things, though, can be chosen. Skills training, healthy diet, exercise, enrichment, sufficient sleep can all be choices you make to help your brain. Whereas also things such as addictions, impulsivity, poor nutrition, and violence can also be chosen. I think some people would argue addictions right there, that sometimes people just fall into it and can't get out of it, but you get the idea. That's what we're looking at here. Choice for Chapter 5, Neuroplasticity, a deeper dive, solo work reading. So for this one, Group 1, solo work, slide 20. Interesting. Group 2, oh, that's going to be another slide thing, huh? Interesting. Do I want you guys to independently read or participate? Honestly, I think by the time I get to this slide, we're going to be nearing the 7 o'clock mark, so I might not even do this. So I'll probably have it be solo work reading for that, so where people read some bits of Chapter 5, and we might even do the group slides. I really think by this time we're going to be approaching that 11th hour. How to foster neuroplasticity. Readiness. You need to have buy-in and relevance and energizers, meaningful, inspiring, clear starting points for learning, attention, and focus. You need coherent construction, fast initial learning curve, increasing challenge and complexity, time to integrate, and daily focused practice. And then consolidation. Give quick, clear feedback for error correction, use breaks for sleep, reinforce multiple times. This is kind of the teaching cycle, really, if you will. You give your students chances to read, reflect, respond, and retain, okay? And that's so this kind of goes hand in hand with those ideas. And you want to start maybe a lesson with a energizing movement activity. Let's say you wanted to teach students about photosynthesis. So you might have students, if you're talking about cute little kindergartners or first graders, have them lie on the ground and say, you're a seed, and now you're gonna squiggle up and stand up and bloom up into a beautiful flower or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out of my mind here, but that might get them to move and get energized and to think about things. And then you might say, here's a picture of a flower, and here's a picture of a seed that the flower has, and it grows up. The seed grows up into the flower. So you introduce that idea, and then maybe you do some stuff with you plant your own seeds, and you have the students watch the seeds grow into flowers, and this gives them time to integrate in those kind of ideas. Very simple kind of lessons, and that's something we all probably did back in kindergarten: plant things and watch them grow. Very similar ideas to how to foster ideas around neuroplasticity. Time for a break? No. Putting it all into words? Yes. What concepts are important for student learning? The one sentence summary. Chat blast. So let's take a look here on what my notes say. Bring it to the board. Well, we're not going to be in the board. So what concepts are important for student learning? The one sentence summary. I got to think about what exactly she means about that. I'm assuming is what concepts are important for student learning. What do students need in order to learn? For me, I would go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and understand that the basic needs of a student need to be met in order for a student to learn. And you're talking about food, shelter, sense of safety, things like that. So for me, that all starts there. But for other people, they might bring up different answers in regards to that. So, and that's a one sentence summary chat blast. That's going to be something that's put in the chat as well. Homework. So why? Oh, oops, that's not what I want to do. So why are we taking a break when we're just going to have that and then go into the reading? I don't like that part of the slide. Homework number 3, reading pages 95 through 123. Very similar stuff. 95 through 123. Let's see here real quick before I go on. That's going to be talking about how emotions impact learning. That's going to be probably a pretty big chapter, henceforth 95 through 123. But yes, emotions definitely impact learning. That's what you're going to be reading about in your next homework assignment. CFC final project. After reading, practicing, so it's just the same thing as we talked about with the CFC final project. I'm sure that's a link to the CFC final project. It is. All I'm going to say is you might want to start thinking about your strategy you want to employ, and then start planning some ideas in regards to that. So we've already talked about a lot of different strategies. You've seen some brain-based strategies from the book. I pointed to a website that has brain-based strategies, and you've been introduced to them in your slides. Take one of these brain-based strategies and start thinking about how you're going to employ it in your classroom. And I would suggest to you all that you want to start getting the plan part going on with your lesson that you're going to do here. All right. And then next week, I'm going to suggest you do part 2, and then you might want to do parts 3A and 3B and next steps. So each week from now on, I would suggest you want to do one plan, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 3B, next steps. It's kind of what I'm thinking about with that. CFC Part 1, the plan. Hey, look at that. Driving question. How can I use a brain-based learning principle in my classroom to enhance student learning? Plan and teach. Research a brain-based strategy. Explain your goal for implementing the strategy. What need are you addressing by the strategy? Describe the strategy in detail. Explain how it supports learning. Cite your references, so on and so forth. 30 minutes. Boy, I'm really thinking that it's going to be like 7:10 when I do this. And I'm just going to say, this is that part that you're going to have to focus on it. I'm going to kind of speed through this so I can try to get everybody out by 7 o'clock, 7:10 at the latest, because I don't want to be having everybody too long. We're not going to need a 30-minute break. And then you got your exit ticket too. It's a long class, I tell you what. But strategy reflection. Throughout the class, several brain-based strategies were used intentionally. Which ones resonated to you? That icebreaker, self-reflection, visual arts videos, engagement with discrepant events. Did you notice the gorilla? Collaboration, breakout rooms, group slides, jigsaw jam board, talking about culturally, blah, 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 blah. All those things, okay? And then see you next time. So those are the slides. And thank you for sitting through this with me. I hope this was helpful, and I know it was for me. I'll see you next week.